Welcome to another week, another show of Hawkeyed with me, Dave O'Hara. In a moment, you'll see our good buddy James Moses joining us. Yeah, not James Moses, former Hawkeye basketball playing great. James will join us. And the last March, he, after working 29 years in the parole system in the state of Iowa for the Department of Corrections, James was appointed by Governor Reynolds. Now he's on the parole board. So pretty great stuff professionally since his Hawkeye playing life. But James, I'll bring you in right now. We're talking men's basketball. The first segment, then you and I will talk women's basketball. The second segment, and we'll close out with a special tribute to your former teammate and buddy, Chris Street. As we know, Chris passed away. Coming up now, 30 or just past a week ago last Sunday on January 19th, 32 years ago. So just unfathomable 2 weeks before Chris's 21st birthday. So we'll talk about your memories of Chris Street. But first and foremost, as always, James, thanks for joining us. And how's everything going with you, my friend?
Everything is going good. Can't complain. Just, trying to keep up with the highs and the lows.
That's all we can do, my friend. And of course, folks, if you don't know, I'll remind you or tell you, initiate you. James and I are on with Doug Wagner, the voice of Iowa on WMT Radio, pregame for Hawkeye men's and women's basketball on 600 News Radio 600 WMT. You can go to the website if you can't dial it up on your radio. If you're out of the area, you can listen worldwide on the iHeartRadio app or on WMT's website. So, James, we talk all the time, but I haven't seen you in about a year on this show, so it's great to reconnect with you. So let's get to it. Hawkeye men, 13-8. Some troubling stats I'm going to give to you here. So 13-8 overall, 4-6 in the Big Ten. But James, most importantly, they're 0-5 on the road this year. In specifics, haven't won a game in the Big Ten on the road. Tough loss at Ohio State where they were in it the first half and then just couldn't withstand the blitzkrieg. Ended up losing 82-65 the other night on Monday night as we record this on Wednesday afternoon, January 29th. That's after beating Penn State, James, at Carver Hawkeye Arena. The Hawks had that game salted away and darn near gave it away. 76-75, Hawks hung on. So you talk about ups and downs and holding on. I don't think if it was for without Drew Thelwell and Owen Freeman, this Hawk team would be cooked. James, let's talk about that, please.
Yeah, they're having some challenges. I think some of the challenges is still chemistry. I think a lot of the Hawks want to play the game the way they have been used to playing, which is very much up-tempo and play at a fast pace. But, that to me seems to get away from the talents of what Owen Freeman can do down on the box. And sometimes it appears that they would be better off trying to establish the post and allowing Owen Freeman to, get the benefit of the doubt, do the scoring that he's been doing, be physical, draw some fouls, get to the free throw line, just all those different things so that the teams that have a hard time, they can adjust to him. And so then when they make those adjustments, I think Owen is still good enough to be able to make those passes out to like a Josh Dix, to Drew Thelwell, to Peyton Sanford, just to give them cleaner looks. And then I think when you're able to do that inside-outside game, I think that will help to make Brock Harding even a better shooter because now you're able to, not necessarily shoot off the dribble. You're able to catch that ball pretty stationary and be ready to knock it down once you get it.
The intriguing thing, you and I have talked about this on radio and also off air here before we hit record today. And I really wanted to talk to you, and this is no slight to Brock Harding. You mentioned it. He's become a much better outside shooter than first advertised last year, his freshman year, and now in his sophomore year, high school teammate and state champion and Mr. Illinois basketball 2 years ago. It's up from the Quad Cities area on the Illinois side of the Quad Cities. But the intriguing thing to me, James, is he's a great ball handler. Let's make no mistake. I mean, he handles the ball very well. But there are times they don't need that, and the ball needs to move. And you know this, being a former Hawkeye, especially with Tom Davis as your coach, and Fran McCaffrey very much the same way. Move, move, move. That ball has to move. And sometimes it stays in Brock's hands a little too long, and especially when he tries to – and I love his dribble, drive, penetrate. Don't get me wrong, and his dish and or his drive and dish. But sometimes that ball needs to swing and move. Talk about that a little bit, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Him in his sophomore season – who had a lot of freedom as a point guard, his freshman year. And then now coming to the fold of this year, you have that year that, you got over the belt. You're still, from Brock's standpoint, still trying to be creative and trying to do all the things that, came towards his success that freshman year. But it disrupts the chemistry where a lot of times, it looks like it's not as easy for Peyton Sanford to get off his shots or nowhere. A lot of times he's going to get the ball. So that's why a lot of times when you do see him get the ball, he shoots the shot sometimes maybe just a half a second too fast. Sometimes with Josh Dix, you're seeing him do more of trying to manipulate inside the three-point line where he's shooting, a lot more of it, the mid-range shots and not really being able to square up to shoot the threes. Sometimes when Price Sanford comes off the bench, it affects him sometimes with just that chemistry when that ball is being distributed and that rhythm pass to help set up the shot. It kind of gets in the way. And that's why I shared where, credit to Drew Thelwell and nothing against Brock, but I think he's just having that hard time where he's over dribbling, trying to create and doesn't realize that it disrupts the chemistry. And Drew Thelwell seems like he would be a better guard to help set up those things to allow maybe Brock to be more of that two guard. So that, he can kind of pace the game. And Brock, if you watch him, he tends to be a little bit better once, he sees some, action. He sees that Paul being passed around. And then that's when he's able to settle in and get into the fold and do a much better job.
You hit it right there. And it's not just you saying it. That's why I said I didn't want to indict you or Brock. I mean, a lot of people are saying that. You notice Fran had last couple of games has had Brock sit midway through both halves for 6, 8, 10 minutes to your point, and let him get into the flow of the game. And you're exactly right. If the Hawks can get healthy, and everybody talks about this time of year, everybody goes through injuries. But Peyton Manning with the wrist and now the shoulder, Josh Dix with the wrist. Seydou Traore with the ankles finally back and healthy. They can get everybody healthy and playing. Elijah Dembele, we were talking about him early in the year, and now he's kind of gone MIA, missing in action. So got to get Elijah back inside. So to your point, guys are trying to find a role. And my goodness, James, we're approaching February again as we record this on Wednesday afternoon, January 29th. And the Hawks' next game will be at home against Purdue. And if you can't get yourself right by then, that'll be in early February. Number 10 ranked Purdue coming to cover Hawkeye. Now'd be the time to find your role, right?
Oh, yeah. It's Purdue's playing good. But, like them, Ohio State, who Iowa just recently lost to, got a big win at Purdue. And I think they came in with that kind of confidence being able to play at home. You mentioned, Brock Harding. I think just one of the things is just not necessarily try to be the hero, try to find a better role where, allow the game to dictate itself and let the game come to you, where instead of you trying to dictate the game, because that can be a delicate practice. And that's why I see a lot of the off chemistry that is established. But you mentioned something that is really important, how all of them get healthy to be able to unite and be able to play together.
Hey, James, let's put a pin in the talk about Hawkeye men's basketball and come back in segment 2, and we'll talk Hawkeye women's basketball, and then we'll close out the show talking a little bit more about Chris Street and your memories and the unfortunate anniversary of Chris's passing a couple of weeks ago. So, folks, there he is, James Moses, former Hawkeye basketball playing great. I'm Dave O'Hara with Hawkeye. We'll be back with more in just a few moments.
Hawkeyed is brought to you by Better Edge, your ultimate social betting marketplace. With no VIG, you're bound to win more on every bet on Better Edge. Founded by Hawkeye alum James Siles and proud Iowan Greg Kajewski, Better Edge delivers an unmatched betting experience. Plus, what's not to love when they're committed to supporting charities and children's hospitals near you? Join the action now. Sign up at betteredge.com/Hawkeyed and get $10 to start winning more today. Better Edge, where your social betting means your bets go further and you win more.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Momentarily, you'll see our buddy James Moses joining us. James, former Hawkeye basketball playing great. James, of course, joined us in the first segment. Is going to stay over for the third segment. Kind enough to join us for this segment as well. The whole show is what I'm saying. James, of course, played for the Hawks from 88 to 92. My friend, thanks for coming back in segment 2 and talking Hawkeye women's basketball. Let's get to it. We got 14-8 team right now, 4-6 in the Big Ten like the men. So overall record 1 game better than the men at 14-8 and not 13-7. But you and I were talking off the air. Let's bring it on here. This upcoming schedule for the Hawkeye women, as we record this on Wednesday afternoon, January 29th, they play Sunday on national TV against Juju Watkins. Yes, that's the Caitlin Clark jersey retirement game. Caitlin will be in house. Unfortunately, not in uniform, James. But Juju Watkins will be in uniform, and the rest of her number 4 ranked USC Trojans. James, this game should be something else, and you know Carver Hawkeye is going to be lit.
Hey, I like the segue with Caitlin Clark, and I think even though she declared pro, she still has some eligibility that we would
get that COVID year. That COVID year, you're right.
Yeah, that COVID year, so we could exercise that and put her in uniform and be mesmerized, as I'm sure Juju Watkins, she would want to play against Caitlin just because of the season that she's been having. But I mean, what a schedule! They already, the Hawkeyes had a tough January, I thought. Winning 2 games, with Northwestern and against Washington, and then losing 5. So going 2-7 in the Big Ten in the month of January, that's tough. And then now to prepare for another new month of February and starting it off with USC. A lot is on the plate, but this is why you get those earlier games to prepare your personnel. Coach Jan Jensen has a plethora, as we have indicated throughout our segments, of talent on the team. But, one of the biggest things is just trying to find that chemistry that works for them. And, being off a few games, it was really nice to see Hannah Stokey, who's really going to be a pivotal role that is going to be needed in preparation for this Sunday when they prepare to retire Caitlin Clark and have that Carver Hawkeye Arena just going nuts.
This is something I see in the women that you and I have talked about on radio. Let's bring it on TV here. To me, I look at this team, and even last night's game against Northwestern, a team that hasn't won a game in the Big Ten all year. And Iowa had that game handily, James, but it never got over double digits or got crazy. The Hawkeye women just always, you felt comfortable. But then down the stretch, Hannah Stokey had to make some free throws, which she's not been accustomed to, over her career, but has gotten better as the years have gone on now in her junior year. But James, you talk about people trying to find a role. I think Jan Jensen, Coach Jan in her first year, started off 8-0, ranked in the top 25 AP, and then, as you mentioned, that 5-game losing streak. Maybe it's too much talent and trying to find the right mix, because you've got the 4 freshmen and Aaliyah Guyton and Tegan Mulaney, Taylor Stremlow, and of course Ava Hayden got some big minutes when Hannah was out. Go back to her native Northwest when they played against UW and Oregon. But then you've got the stalwarts in the Cydney Falters, the Kylie Fearbacks, the Lucy Olsons, the Addie O'Grady, Hannah Stokey, as you mentioned, and Taylor McKay. I just mentioned 9-10 names right there, James, and I'm just wondering, how do you find enough basketball or enough time to play all these people? That seems to be, James, Coach Jan's biggest struggle right now is finding the right mix. What do you think?
Hey, I think that's why we become analysts and journalists, and we try to analyze and try to come up with what our take from what it seems to us. And Coach Jan Jensen is put in that position to be able to figure it out with the new assistants that she's added to her, so that she can find that comfort as she was to Coach Bluter and as well as Coach Jenny Fitzgerald. But, you mentioned a lot of, key things, and it's nice to be able to have the talent that Coach Jan Jensen has, but you see the tough things, the ironies of how to keep that chemistry, how to establish what works for all the personnel involved, because, having to replace Logo Clark, who's coming in retirement, who's, having to replace
Martin and Gabby Marshall, too.
Gabby Marshall, Kate Martin. So it just shows and illustrates how important those players was for Iowa. That was very important towards their success. Now they're trying to find that. The problem that I kind of, felt, and you can, let me know what your thoughts are, is when they went against Northwestern, they came from winning a big game at Washington, where they really shot very well, I think over 70%.
Yes.
And they started off shooting 9 for 9 from 3 before they started missing, but they still finished that game over 70%. Then you had the starters without Hannah Stokey in the lineup, and then you bring her back in to the starting lineup. You can kind of tell if you watch the game a little bit in that first half, especially that first quarter, there was some, chemistry problems because, Hannah trying to get her legs back. It's one thing to be practice ready, but to also be thrown into the game after missing several games, it makes it difficult. So I just thought that their chemistry was off. It allowed Northwestern to really build their confidence. And so by Northwestern being able to build their confidence, that had some of its struggles for Iowa, trying to, find what makes them work. But it was nice to see, as you mentioned, Hannah Stokey got into a groove. The plethora of freshmen did their thing to be contributors. Cydney Falter, look at her being able to shoot from the outside. People stepping up. Now, we didn't have the best Taylor McKay, but she still was enough to provide that spark that was needed by some of the passes that was made to, establish that team camaraderie. And those are kind of the things that you want to be able to pick up on and continue to try to do as they prepare for USC and this tough month, as you mentioned, of February.
Well, you nailed it perfectly. And that's one thing Coach Jan Jensen has talked about is the upperclassmen, seniors like a Falter, Olsen, some of these players are pushing a bit too much or, quote unquote, trying too hard, where the freshmen are just coming in and letting it rip. Here's the thing I look at too, James. And again, you and I have talked about this on radio with Doug Wagner on our free pregame show on WMT, every men's or women's game leading into that on the weekends. To me, James, it was imperative to have a Caitlin Clark because who you could go to down the stretch. She'd say, hop on, I'm going to take us home. Or Kate Martin or Gabby if Caitlin was triple teamed, although she even still seemed to get the shot off and make it. That's the one thing I think that the Hawkeye women need this year. They're missing the most is they need somebody to say, hey, there's 1 second left. I got to take the shot. Get me the ball. And this as a former player, you were a gunner and a shooter. And folks, by the way, James, a career 1,300 plus points in his 4 years, sterling 4-year career for Tom Davis and the Iowa Hawkeyes in the late 80s or early 90s. But you know what that's like, James. You've got to have somebody who's able to say, get it to me. I'm ready. Let's go.
Yeah. And that's a tough thing. I mean, when you have the success that, was behind Caitlin Logo Clark, let's not forget that.
Yeah.
She, embodied, what she did through her actions on the floor, and that helped to create confidence. The other thing that Caitlin Clark did that I don't know where this is coming from any of the Iowa personnel, Caitlin was very upfront. And some people may not have liked it, but she was very critical and very much showcased leadership at times when sometimes people didn't want to hear it. And so when you're going to have that, I call it bark, that leadership that's going to be able to challenge you in order to be better, Caitlin Clark provided that, and the team corralled around her. The only player that I do see that from potentially that Iowa currently has right now is Cydney Falter. Yep. Okay. And I want to hopefully be able to see it more. But, with the freshmen that are coming in, they're just trying to find, they don't know no better.
Yeah, that's right.
They're just trying to come in, find their place and trying to fit into maybe a role that might be a little bit too bigger for them for right now, because what the coach is trying to do is accent team chemistry. And so who's going to step into that leadership role that really holds those players collectively accountable? And that's what is missing that Caitlin Clark, I thought, was able to provide. And that's why we saw a lot of success at Iowa.
For James Moses, I'm Dave O'Hara with Hawkeye. We'll be back with more in just a few moments.
Farming comes with a lot of frustrations, but the number one conversation you don't want to have is when your local seedsman says, I'm sorry, we don't have that hybrid that you early ordered and paid for. Hi, this is Joe Mershman from Mershman Seeds. We do business a little different. We call it the Mershman Seeds no substitution or it's free guarantee. If we do not deliver the hybrid that you ordered, the substitution will be free. Contact your local Mershman Seeds dealer today and we'd be happy to increase your corn yield with our best hybrids. From Mershman Seeds, your friend in the field.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Momentarily, you'll see our buddy James Moses joining us. James, kind enough to join us for the whole show. Former Hawkeye basketball playing great. We're going to talk some Chris Street memories here in just a moment with James, a former teammate of Chris's. But don't forget, folks, this Friday, by the time you see this show, you'll probably already know, but the Hawks going to Penn State, number 1 against number 2. The number 2 Iowa Hawkeyes in wrestling. Tom Brands' boys going to Happy Valley, and hopefully they make it at Unhappy Valley. Number 1 against number 2 in college wrestling. Can't wait for that. Of course, Coach Chun and her ladies just setting the world ablaze. Number 1 in the country in wrestling again this year for Hawkeye women's wrestling. So a lot of great stuff going on. But James, thanks again for staying for the whole show. Let's talk about something I know I've had many conversations with Jess Settles about this. A lot of your former teammates, Kent McCausland, with Chris Street, and just such a sad passing with the anniversary of that. I know it's on your mother's birthday of all things too, January 19th. So 2 reasons for you to remember January 19th, but January 19th of 1993, and Chris Street, about 2 weeks before his 21st birthday, tragically taken from us in that auto accident he had with a snowplow. And just talk a little bit about the impact he had to you as an upperclassman. I know when he came on campus for his visit in India, and an Iowa boy through and through, just like Jess Settles. And you mentioned that a special recruit, but just a special guy on and off the court. Your recollections, please, James.
Thanks. Anyway, as we've discussed, it's one of those days that I have my highs and I have my lows, and you just try to find that common ground where a life was taken from us, but another life is adding in years. So like this past year, my mom celebrated 81 years of life, and so it's a tough one for me, because when I found out about what happened to Chris, it just was one of those very unfortunate situations. When you look at his parents, Mike and Pat, and just what they mean to, the family, and just to see what had happened to them, and knowing that, their son, very hard worker, very charismatic, just a fun-loving individual, who was just friends with all of us, all of us that were teammates. I can just go through the names and the list of people that, shared in friendships, where we went to play pool, we practiced, there's, segues where we shot free throws, just competing, but trying to also make each other better, and just sharing in that camaraderie, so that when he, a good storyteller and loved to tell jokes and stuff. But one of the other things that we were passionate about that I miss is we both had a passion for the outdoors, and fishing was on that list of sports/hobby. And to know that he is no longer and hasn't been with us for some while, know that he's in paradise, on that tough day, as I, am in sorrow for the loss, but in celebration for my mom.
Well, and as you mentioned, in celebration of the life that you got to share with Chris and you and your teammates, I know, again, you were a couple years older than him, so you were a year removed from Iowa when he had that accident. But I just know a lot of us fans remember him at the head of that zone, that full court defense that Tom Davis always played. And Chris was right there in the face of the out of bounds, the guy taking the ball from out of bounds. And as you mentioned, the times of playing pool together as teammates or fishing as friends. I remember you telling me, and also Kenyon Murray told me a story. Settles, Settles would say, we'd bring some guys over and play barn ball at Settles' farm, over there by Mount Pleasant, a little east of Mount Pleasant, in Winfield, Mount Union. And Clay Edwards, who played at a high school teammate of Jess Settles, played at Iowa State at the same time. And Jess said, we'd get some guys packed in that gym. And he said, like you said, a lot of good camaraderie, but a lot of trash talking. And like you said, competitive, fun stuff. And I just love hearing you guys tell stories. And I would have loved, as Jess said the same thing you said, and Kent McCausland said, no better storyteller than Chris Street, and could really shoot the stuff against you guys. It was fun stories.
It was just a lot of fun. And, I have to share this. I share this a lot with people, but, people give me a lot of credit for the tip in at Indiana. And, that was, part of the blessing, because here, when AC Earl missed that shot, Chris Street was right there to put it in. And so there was a part reaction that I had that, when Chris rebounds the ball, chances are and get those offensive rebounds like he used to, he always had a knack for, getting fouled or putting it in. And unfortunately, he missed that. But then that miss led to an opportunity. And it was nice that we was collectively able to get that win as a team and celebrate. But I'm thankful for Chris, who gave me that opportunity, because as talented as he was, he accidentally gave me that opportunity by missing that shot.
James, I can't thank you enough for sitting for the whole show for us this week. We'll talk to you for part of the show next week. And again, as I mentioned, Craig and Stacey Schrader will join us as well with the Flash Foundation to close out the show next week as well. So, James, my friend, I will talk to you on radio as I do every week with Doug Wagner on 600 WMT. Thanks so much, my friend.
Hey, no problem. Thank you. Please tell Craig and Stacey I said hello. Thank you and Greg for this opportunity. I appreciate you. And hey, see you this week.
I look forward to it. Hey, James, you're welcome, and thank you so much. So for James Moses, I'm Dave O'Hara, and the aforementioned Greg Kajewski, my business partners at Better Edge and BetterEdge.com. That's all from us at Hawkeye. Thanks to all of you.